Chapter 2, Part 2 of Laws by Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Athenian. And which may be supposed to be the truer judgment, that of the inferior or of the better soul? Cleinias. Surely that of the better soul. Athenian. Then the unjust life must not only be more base and depraved, but also more unpleasant than the just and holy life. Cleinias. That seems to be implied in the present argument. Athenian. And even supposing this were otherwise, and not as the argument has proven, still the lawgiver, who is worth anything if he ever ventures to tell a lie to the young for their good, could not invent a more useful lie than this, or one which will have a better effect in making them do what is right, not on compulsion, but voluntarily. Cleinias. Truth, Stranger, is a noble thing and a lasting, but a thing of which men are hard to be persuaded. Athenian. And yet the story of the Sidonian Cadmus, which is so improbable, has been readily believed, and also innumerable other tales. Cleinias. What is that story? Athenian. The story of armed men springing up after the sowing of teeth, which the legislator may take as a proof that he can persuade the minds of the young of anything, so that he has only to reflect and find out what belief will be of the greatest public advantage, and then use all his efforts to make the whole community utter one and the same word in their songs and tales and discourses all their life long. But if you do not agree with me, there is no reason why you should not argue on the other side. Cleinias. I do not see that any argument can fairly be raised by either of us against what you are now saying. Athenian. The next suggestion which I have to offer is, that all our three choruses shall sing to the young and tender souls of children, reciting in their strains all the noble thoughts of which we have already spoken, or are about to speak, and the sum of them shall be, that the life which is by the gods deemed to be the happiest is also the best. We shall affirm this to be a most certain truth, and the minds of our young disciples will be more likely to receive these words of ours than any others which we might address to them. Cleinias. I assent to what you say. Athenian. First will enter in their natural order the sacred choir composed of children, which is to sing lustily the heaven-taught lay to the whole city. Next will follow the choir of young men under the age of 30, who will call upon the god Paean to testify to the truth of their words, and will pray him to be gracious to the youth and to turn their hearts. Thirdly, the choir of elder men, who are from 30 to 60 years of age, will also sing. There remain those who are too old to sing, and they will tell stories, illustrating the same virtues as with the voice of an oracle. Cleinias. Who are those who compose the third choir, Stranger? For I do not clearly understand what you mean to say about them. Athenian. And yet almost all that I have been saying has been said with a view to them. Cleinias. Will you try to be a little plainer? Athenian. I was speaking at the commencement of our discourse, as you will remember, of the fiery nature of young creatures. I said that they were unable to keep quiet either in limb or voice, and that they called out and jumped about in a disorderly manner, and that no other animal attained to any perception of order but man only. Now the order of motion is called rhythm, and the order of the voice, in which high and low are duly mingled, is called harmony. and both together are termed choric song. And I said that the gods had pity on us and gave us Apollo and the Muses to be our playfellows and leaders in the dance. And Dionysus, as I dare say that you will remember, was the third. Cleinias, I quite remember. Athenian, thus far I have spoken of the chorus of Apollo and the Muses, and I have still to speak of the remaining chorus, which is that of Dionysus. Cleinias, how is that arranged? There is something strange, at any rate on first hearing, in a Dionysiac chorus of old men, if you really mean that those who are above 30 and maybe 50, or from 50 to 60 years of age, are to dance in his honour. Athenian, very true, and therefore it must be shown that there is good reason for the proposal. Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, are we agreed thus far? Cleinias, about what? Athenian, that every man and boy, slave and free, both sexes and the whole city, should never cease charming themselves with the strains of which we have spoken, and that there should be every sort of change and variation of them, in order to take away the effect of sameness, so that the singers may always receive pleasure from their hymns, and may never weary of them. Cleinias, every one will agree. Athenian, where then will that best part of our city, which, by reason of age and intelligence, has the greatest influence, sing these fairest of strains, which are to do so much good? Shall we be so foolish as to let them off, who would give us the most beautiful and also the most useful of songs? Cleinias, but, says the argument, we cannot let them off. Athenian, then how can we carry out our purpose with decorum? Will this be the way? Cleinias, what? Athenian, when a man is advancing in years, he is afraid and reluctant to sing. He has no pleasure in his own performances, and if compulsion is used, he will be more and more ashamed the older and more discreet he grows. Is not this true? Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, well, and will he not be yet more ashamed if he has to stand up and sing in the theatre to a mixed audience, and if, moreover, when he is required to do so, like the other choirs who contend for prizes and have been trained under a singing master, he is pinched and hungry, he will certainly have a feeling of shame and discomfort, which will make him very unwilling to exhibit. Cleinias, no doubt. Athenian, how then shall we reassure him and get him to sing? Shall we begin by enacting that boys shall not taste wine at all until they are 18 years of age? We will tell them that fire must not be poured upon fire, whether in the body or in the soul, until they begin to go to work. This is a precaution which has to be taken against the excitableness of youth. Afterwards they may taste wine in moderation up to the age of 30, but while a man is young he should abstain altogether from intoxication and from excess of wine. When at length he has reached 40 years, after dinner at a public mess, he may invite not only the other gods, but Dionysus above all, to the mystery and festivity of the elder men, making use of the wine which he has given men to lighten the sourness of old age, that in age we may renew our youth and forget our sorrows, and also in order that the nature of the soul, like iron melted in the fire, may become softer and so more impressible. In the first place, will not any one who is thus mellowed be more ready and less ashamed to sing? I do not say before a large audience, but before a moderate company, nor yet among strangers, but among his familiars, and, as we have often said, to chant and to enchant. Cleinias, he will be far more ready. Athenian, there will be no impropriety in our using such a method of persuading them to join with us in song. Cleinias, none at all. Athenian, and what strain will they sing, and what muse will they hymn? The strain should clearly be one suitable to them. Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, and what strain is suitable for heroes? Shall they sing a choric strain? Cleinias, truly, stranger, we of Crete and Lacedaemon know no strain other than that which we have learnt and been accustomed to sing in our chorus. Athenian, I dare say, for you have never acquired the knowledge of the most beautiful kind of song in your military way of life, which is modelled after the camp, and is not like that of dwellers in cities, and you have your young men herding and feeding together like young colts. No one takes his own individual colt and drags him away from his fellows against his will, raging and foaming, and gives him a groom to attend to him alone, and trains and rubs him down privately, and gives him the qualities in education which will make him not only a good soldier, but also a governor of a state and of cities. Such an one, as we said at first, would be a greater warrior than he of whom Tyrtaeus sings, and he would honour courage everywhere, but always as the fourth, and not as the first part of virtue, either in individuals or states. Cleinias, once more, stranger, I must complain that you depreciate our lawgivers. Athenian, not intentionally, if at all, my good friend, but whither the argument leads, thither let us follow. For if there be indeed some strain of song more beautiful than that of the choruses or the public theatres, I should like to impart it to those who, as we say, are ashamed of these, and want to have the best. Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, when things have an accompanying charm, either the best thing in them is this very charm, or there is some rightness or utility possessed by them. For example, I should say that eating and drinking, and the use of food in general, have an accompanying charm, which we call pleasure, but that this rightness and utility is just the healthfulness of the things served up to us, which is their true rightness. Cleinias, just so. Athenian, thus, too, I should say that learning has a certain accompanying charm, which is the pleasure, but that the right and the profitable, the good and the noble, are qualities which the truth gives to it. Cleinias, exactly. Athenian, and so in the imitative arts, if they succeed in making likenesses and are accompanied by pleasure, may not their works be said to have a charm? Cleinias, yes. Athenian, but equal proportions, whether of quality or quantity, and not pleasure, speaking generally, would give them truth or rightness. Cleinias, yes. Athenian, then that only can be rightly judged by the standard of pleasure, which makes or furnishes no utility or truth or likeness, nor, on the other hand, is productive of any hurtful quality, but exists solely for the sake of the accompanying charm. And the term pleasure is most appropriately applied to it when these other qualities are absent. Cleinias, you are speaking of harmless pleasure, are you not? Athenian, yes, and this I term amusement, when doing neither harm nor good in any degree worth speaking of. Cleinias, very true. Athenian, then if such be our principles, we must assert that imitation is not to be judged of by pleasure and false opinion, and this is true of all equality, for the equal is not equal, or the symmetrical, because somebody thinks or likes something, but they are to be judged of by the standard of truth, and by no other whatever. Cleinias, quite true. Athenian, do we not regard all music as representative and imitative? Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, then when any one says that music is to be judged of by pleasure, his doctrine cannot be admitted. And if there be any music of which pleasure is the criterion, such music is not to be sought out or deemed to have any real excellence, but only that other kind of music which is an imitation of the good. Cleinias, very true. Athenian, and those who seek for the best kind of song and music ought not to seek for that which is pleasant, but for that which is true. And the truth of imitation consists, as we were saying, in rendering the thing imitated according to quantity and quality. Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, and every one will admit that musical compositions are all imitative and representative. Will not poets and spectators and actors all agree in this? Cleinias, they will. Athenian, surely then he who would judge correctly must know what each composition is. For if he does not know what is the character and meaning of the piece, and what it represents, he will never discern whether the intention is true or false. Cleinias, certainly not. Athenian, and will he who does not know what is true be able to distinguish what is good and bad? My statement is not very clear, but perhaps you will understand me better if I put the matter in another way. Cleinias, how? Athenian, there are 10,000 likenesses of objects of sight. Cleinias, yes. Athenian, and can he who does not know what the exact object is which is imitated ever know whether the resemblance is truthfully executed? I mean, for example, whether a statue has the proportions of a body and the true situation of the parts, what those proportions are, and how the parts fit into one another in due order, also their colours and conformations, or whether this is all confused in the execution. Do you think that any one can know about this who does not know what the animal is which has been imitated? Cleinias, impossible. Athenian, but even if we know that the thing pictured or sculptured is a man who has received at the hand of the artist all his proper parts and colours and shapes, must we not also know whether the work is beautiful or in any respect deficient in beauty? Cleinias, if this were not required, Stranger, we should all of us be judges of beauty. Athenian, very true. And may we not say that in everything imitated, whether in drawing, music, or any other art, he who is to be a competent judge must possess three things? He must know in the first place of what the imitation is. Secondly, he must know that it is true, and thirdly, that it has been well executed in words and melodies and rhythms. Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, then let us not faint in discussing the peculiar difficulty of music. Music is more celebrated than any other kind of imitation, and therefore requires the greatest care of them all. For if a man makes a mistake here, he may do himself the greatest injury by welcoming evil dispositions, and the mistake may be very difficult to discern, because the poets are artists very inferior in character to the Muses themselves, who would never fall into the monstrous error of assigning to the words of men the gestures and songs of women; nor, after combining the melodies with the gestures of freemen, would they add on the rhythms of slaves and men of the baser sort; nor, beginning with the rhythms and gestures of freemen, would they assign to them a melody or words which are of an opposite character; nor would they mix up the voices and sounds of animals and of men and instruments and every other sort of noise, as if they were all one. But human poets are fond of introducing this sort of inconsistent mixture, and so make themselves ridiculous in the eyes of those who, as Orpheus says, are ripe for true pleasure. The experienced see all this confusion, and yet the poets go on and make still further havoc by separating the rhythm and the figure of the dance from the melody, setting bare words to metre, and also separating the melody and the rhythm from the words, using the lyre or the flute alone. For when there are no words, it is very difficult to recognize the meaning of the harmony and rhythm, or to see that any worthy object is imitated by them. And we must acknowledge that all this sort of thing, which aims only at swiftness and smoothness and a brutish noise, and uses the flute and the lyre not as the mere accompaniments of the dance and song, is exceedingly coarse and tasteless. The use of either instrument, when unaccompanied, leads to every sort of irregularity and trickery. This is all rational enough, but we are considering not how our choristers, who are from 30 to 50 years of age, and may be over 50, are not to use the Muses, but how they are to use them, and the considerations which we have urged seem to show in what way these 50 years old choristers who are to sing may be expected to be better trained, for they need to have a quick perception and knowledge of harmonies and rhythms. Otherwise, how can they ever know whether a melody would be rightly sung to the Dorian mode, or to the rhythm which the poet has assigned to it? Cleinias. Clearly they cannot. Athenian. The many are ridiculous in imagining that they know what is in proper harmony and rhythm, and what is not, when they can only be made to sing and step in rhythm by force. It never occurs to them that they are ignorant of what they are doing. Now every melody is right when it has suitable harmony and rhythm, and wrong when unsuitable. Cleinias. That is most certain. Athenian. But can a man who does not know a thing, as we were saying, know that the thing is right? Cleinias. Impossible. Athenian. Then now, as would appear, we are making the discovery that our newly appointed choristers, whom we hereby invite, and although they are their own masters, compelled to sing, must be educated to such an extent as to be able to follow the steps of the rhythm and the notes of the song, that they may know the harmonies and rhythms, and be able to select what are suitable for men of their age and character to sing, and may sing them and have innocent pleasure from their own performance, and also lead younger men to welcome with dutiful delight good dispositions. Having such training, they will attain a more accurate knowledge than falls to the lot of the common people, or even of the poets themselves. For the poet need not know the third point, viz., whether the imitation is good or not, though he can hardly help knowing the laws of melody and rhythm. But the aged chorus must know all the three, that they may choose the best, and that which is nearest to the best, for otherwise they will never be able to charm the souls of young men in the way of virtue. And now the original design of the argument, which was intended to bring eloquent aid to the chorus of Dionysus, has been accomplished to the best of our ability, and let us see whether we were right. I should imagine that a drinking assembly is likely to become more and more tumultuous as the drinking goes on. This, as we were saying at first, will certainly be the case. Cleinias. Certainly. Athenian. Every man has a more than natural elevation, his heart is glad within him, and he will say anything and will be restrained by nobody at such a time. He fancies that he is able to rule over himself and all mankind. Cleinias, quite true. Athenian, were we not saying that on such occasions the souls of the drinkers become like iron heated in the fire, and grow softer and younger, and are easily moulded by him who knows how to educate and fashion them, just as when they were young, and that this fashioner of them is the same who prescribed for them in the days of their youth, viz., the good legislator, and that he ought to enact laws of the banquet, which, when a man is confident, bold, and impudent, and unwilling to wait his turn, and have his share of silence and speech, and drinking and music, will change his character into the opposite. Such laws as will infuse into him a just and noble fear, which will take up arms at the approach of insolence, being that divine fear which we have called reverence and shame. Cleinias, true. Athenian, and the guardians of these laws and fellow workers with them are the calm and sober generals of the drinkers, and without their help there is greater difficulty in fighting against drink than in fighting against enemies when the commander of an army is not himself calm, and he who is unwilling to obey them, and the commanders of Dionysiac feasts, who are more than 60 years of age, shall suffer a disgrace as great as he who disobeys military leaders, or even greater. Cleinias, right. Athenian, if then drinking and amusement were regulated in this way, would not the companions of our revels be improved? They would part better friends than they were, and not, as now, enemies. Their whole intercourse would be regulated by law and observant of it, and the sober would be the leaders of the drunken. Cleinias, I think so too, if drinking were regulated as you propose. Athenian, let us not then simply censure the gift of Dionysus as bad and unfit to be received into the state, for wine has many excellences, and one preeminent one, about which there is a difficulty in speaking to the many, from a fear of their misconceiving and misunderstanding what is said. Cleinias, to what do you refer? Athenian, there is a tradition or story which has somehow crept about the world that Dionysus was robbed of his wits by his stepmother Here, and that out of revenge he inspires Bacchic furies and dancing madnesses in others, for which reason he gave men wine. Such traditions concerning the gods I leave to those who think that they may be safely uttered. Compare EUTHYPH, period, semicolon, Republic, end of parentheses. I only know that no animal at birth is mature or perfect in intelligence, and in the intermediate period, in which he has not yet acquired his own proper sense, he rages and roars without rhyme or reason, and when he has once got on his legs, he jumps about without rhyme or reason, and this, as you will remember, has been already said by us to be the origin of music and gymnastic. Cleinias, to be sure, I remember. Athenian, and did we not say that the sense of harmony and rhythm sprang from this beginning among men, and that Apollo and the Muses and Dionysus were the gods whom we had to thank for them? Cleinias, certainly. Athenian, the other story implied that wine was given man out of revenge, and in order to make him mad. But our present doctrine, on the contrary, is that wine was given him as a balm, and in order to implant modesty in the soul, and health and strength in the body. Cleinias, that, stranger, is precisely what was said. Athenian, then half the subject may now be considered to have been discussed. Shall we proceed to the consideration of the other half? Cleinias, what is the other half, and how do you divide the subject? Athenian, the whole choral art is also, in our view, the whole of education, and of this art, rhythms and harmonies form the part which has to do with the voice. Cleinias, yes. Athenian, the movement of the body has rhythm in common with the movement of the voice, but gesture is peculiar to it, whereas song is simply the movement of the voice. Cleinias, most true. Athenian, and the sound of the voice which reaches and educates the soul we have ventured to term music. Cleinias, we were right. Athenian, and the movement of the body, when regarded as an amusement, we termed dancing. But when extended and pursued with a view to the excellence of the body, this scientific training may be called gymnastic. Cleinias, exactly. Athenian, music, which was one half of the choral art, may be said to have been completely discussed. Shall we proceed to the other half or not? What would you like? Cleinias, my good friend, when you are talking with a Cretan and a Lacedaemonian, and we have discussed music and not gymnastic, what answer are either of us likely to make to such an enquiry? Athenian, an answer is contained in your question, and I understand and accept what you say, not only as an answer, but also as a command to proceed with gymnastic. Cleinias, you quite understand me. Do as you say. Athenian, I will, and there will not be any difficulty in speaking intelligibly to you about a subject with which both of you are far more familiar than with music. Cleinias, there will not. Athenian, is not the origin of gymnastics, too, to be sought in the tendency to rapid motion, which exists in all animals? Man, as we were saying, having attained the sense of rhythm, created and invented dancing, and melody arousing and awakening rhythm, both united, formed the choral art. Cleinias, very true. Athenian, and one part of this subject has been already discussed by us, and there still remains another to be discussed. Cleinias, exactly. Athenian, I have first a final word to add to my discourse about drink, if you will allow me to do so. Cleinias, what more have you to say? Athenian, I should say that if a city seriously means to adopt the practice of drinking under due regulation and with a view to the enforcement of temperance, and in like manner and on the same principle will allow of other pleasures, designing to gain the victory over them, in this way all of them may be used. But if the state makes drinking an amusement only, and whoever likes may drink whenever he likes and with whom he likes, and add to this any other indulgences, I shall never agree or allow that this city or this man should practise drinking. I would go further than the Cretans and Lacedaemonians, and am disposed rather to the law of the Carthaginians, that no one while he is on a campaign should be allowed to taste wine at all, but that he should drink water during all that time, and that in the city no slave, male or female, should ever drink wine, and that no magistrates should drink during their year of office, nor should pilots of vessels or judges, while on duty, taste wine at all, nor any one who is going to hold a consultation about any matter of importance, nor in the daytime at all, unless in consequence of exercise or as a medicine, nor again at night, when any one, either man or woman, is minded to get children. There are numberless other cases also in which those who have good sense and good laws ought not to drink wine, so that if what I say is true, no city will need many vineyards. Their husbandry and their way of life in general will follow an appointed order, and their cultivation of the vine will be the most limited and the least common of their employments. And this, stranger, shall be the crown of my discourse about wine, if you agree. Cleinias, excellent. We agree. End of Book 2.